The interpretation of punk. Punk started as the plainest and purest form of rock, which then changed into a conceptual movement embracing the eccentric. Hanif Abdurraqib talks about his experience in the punk rock scene and how it affects him in his book They Can't Kill Us Until They Kill Us. He represents the three types of violence in his essay: I wasn't brought here, I was born, punk rock, long enough to find Afro-punk. The movie Green Room in 2015 deals with a lot of violence, such as the three different types of violence that has to do with the punk scene. In conclusion, there's a lot of violence in the punk scene. Punk mentality goes back beyond the 70s. The concept's short, powerful riffs and brief, energetic songs can be traced to the roots of power pop. There is a famous quote by Punk magazine, Sniff and Glue. Here's a chord, here's another one, that's three. Now go and form a band. This quote reveals much about the amateurism of early pop rock bands. Personally, if you think about it, anyone can do it if it's that easy. Punk and reggae were brothers in arms, protesting against authority and returning music to the streets. If you just think about the time and place that punk started to get popular, you'll see some form of the same topics in the present-day punk, which will be addressed later. Punk has certain elements that make it special. In the punk subculture, members of the scene are often evaluated in terms of their commitment to the values and philosophies of the scene, which may range from political beliefs to lifestyle practices. The must-haves for a punk rock style is to have a punk leather jacket, punk boots, spiked clothing and accessories, plaid patterns, skull rings, punk rock dress, and punk hoodies. The swastika armband, safety pins, and torn shirts originated in New York City, but quickly made their way to London and was part of the punk style. There are two types of dancing that are called pogo dancing and moshing. The pogo is a dance in which dancers jump up and down and while remaining in the same spot or moving around. Moshing is a style of dance where participants push or slam into each other, typically during a live music show. It is usually associated with aggressive music genres, such as hardcore punk and thrash metal. Hanif then states in the first line of his essay, I wasn't brought here, I was born, punk rock long enough to find Afro-punk. I don't remember the first time I heard a racist joke at a punk rock show. In making this comment, Abdurraqib urges us to already think what the rest of the essay is going to be about. He then continues on to say, rather, I don't remember the first time I was grabbed into a sweaty half hug by one of the laughing white members of the Midwest punk scene and told, don't worry about it. We don't think of you that way. He confuses us to think this is going to be a racial issue when it turns around into a violence issue that deals with a lot of different topics. Abdurraqib then goes into, I don't remember the first time I saw a teenage girl shoved out of the way so that a teenage boy her size or greater could have a better view of the stage. I don't remember the first time that I made an excuse for being a silent witness. The essence of Abdurraqib's argument is that he can't remember the first time any of those encounters happened because it has happened so much that he can no longer keep up with it. Later in the essay, he explains a traumatic moment that happened at a brand new show last year. In Abdurraqib's view, it was a hot night, and even hotter in the venue, a closed-in brick space with few windows. He stood upstairs looking down. Halfway through, he noticed the only black kid in the pit passed out. As a few of us above pointed at to try and draw attention, he watched as his peers stepped over him. Some kicked him in the pursuit to keep dancing, to maybe touch the edge of the stage that their heroes graced. Basically, Abdurraqib is stating that the artists on top of the stage were more important to surrounding peers of the black boy than the black boy's well-being. Abdurraqib keeps getting deeper and deeper into that violence, which he then explains as it is a different issue and that wasn't even about the black boy in the first place. He starts to talk about the present-day issues. Another example of how expendable the black body can be when in the way of needs that are greater than it, the range of those needs changing by the hour or second. It was another image of black fragility and dismissal. Of course not as harsh as videos of guns firing into black men or the force-feeding of mugshots we get when a dead victim is black. Abdurraqib is stating that the punk scene violence is also the present-day violence and is extremely relatable. Abdur-Rakib then gets deeper by saying, but it was a reminder that choosing invisibility means giving yourself over to what so many systems in this country already deem you. Nothing is more punk rock than surviving in a hungry sea of white noise. When he says invisibility means choosing what this country already deems you, I feel he is pointing out what he did with the black boy in the pit and what other people doing today when they stay silent to obvious racial violence. The movie Green Room 2015 is an American horror film focused on a punk rock band who finds himself attacked by a neo-Nazi skinhead after witnessing a murder at a remote club. Pat, Sam, Reese, and Tigger are members of the band called the Ain't Rights. Somehow their gig gets canceled and the host rearranges another gig through his cousin, Daniel. After their new gig, Sam left her phone in the green room where they originally got ready in before the show, so Pat goes to grab it for her. When Pat goes into the room to retrieve her phone, he looks over to see a girl named Emily on the floor, stabbed to death. Pat immediately calls the police, and the phone gets taken away along with the rest of their phones by some of the bar employees, and they are put into the green room. After the band is put into the green room, they are held captive by a man that has a gun. Later, the leader of the neo-Nazi skinhead, Darcy, tells the man to give the band member the gun so they don't have to fear them. It all backfires, and the band won't come out unless the cops are there. Let alone the girl that's friends with the girl dead on the floor is there too, and they let the murderer hop out. The cops showed up, but Darcy made a fake scene of the stabbing, so the cops went on their way out. They ended up killing the guy who held them captive in the room and are fighting for survival to get out when they realize the cops aren't going to come. They all find a drug lab under their room, but the only exit is locked from the outside and they are unable to get out. They all decide to walk out of the green room and into the empty club because the skinheads closed it down till Sunday. Clark, a neo-Nazi, unleashes an attack dog that kills Tiger, and then Reese is killed when he jumps out the window and gets hacked to death. Amber, Pat, and Sam head back to the green room. They make a plan which falls through because Sam gets attacked by the dog, and they are all right back to square one. So, there are 3 types of violence that I keep mentioning, which is in the punk scene and also in real life. The 3 types of violence are glorify, real, and survival, which you are at a concert and people are pushing and shoving one another, moshing is what it's called. It's also called glorified violence. I say glorified for the simple fact that everyone in the pit is participating and loving it. Moshing is a normal kind of violence that is glorified or simulated to make it okay. In the movie Green Room 2015, the band hit a real turn when they saw a girl lying dead on the floor, and that was a realization of it was real life violence. We call it real violence because it was done intentionally. The person who stabbed Emily in the movie did it intentionally and had no remorse. Abdur-Rakib talks about the boy passing out in the mosh pit and how no one seems to give the kid time of day. The kid eventually woke up and headed out the back fighting for his life to make sure he can breathe and get to a safer place because he would have been trampled on and killed. Thank you guys for listening to me talk about the interpretation of punk, and see you next time. Thank you.